Are you fed up with rising auto repair costs and fewer repair options? You're not alone. Big automakers are blocking local repair shops and drivers from making routine fixes, and that's driving up costs for American families. As automakers aim to control basic repair data, tools, and parts, it's becoming more costly, time-consuming, and sometimes impossible for trusted local shops to compete. Too many drivers are forced to go to manufacturer-controlled service centers where they'll pay 36% more on average. When you buy a car, it's yours. You should decide where it gets fixed, not big corporations. Thankfully, the Repair Act, championed by leading conservatives Dr. Neil Dunn and Senator Josh Hawley, would level the playing field. It will ensure equal access to needed repair information and tools, protecting jobs, hundreds of thousands of small businesses, and putting choice back in your hands. Your car, your call. Tell Congress to pass the Repair Act at carrepairchoice.org. Paid for by the Car Coalition.
All right, 7:03 here on Richmond's Morning News. This is News Radio WRVA. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Coming up in just a moment, we will be talking with Governor Rob Wittman. He's going to be, Governor. Maybe he wants to be governor one day. Congressman Rob Wittman. Very interesting. With everything going on with the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, and extending those credits, we kicked the can down the road for a bit, and now we're sitting here with the ACA tax credits. They've expired. The Democrats desperately want to codify them and extend them, and it's going to go back and forth with this can that we keep kicking down the road when it comes to the ACA tax credits. On one hand, they were temporary. They were never meant to be permanent. They were part of Joe Biden's American Rescue Plan and the Inflation Reduction Act. We've broken open the seal of who can have tax credits in the ACA, aka Obamacare. So on one hand, we have I don't even know the number, thousands, millions of Americans that are part of this now. It grew by 78%, and they've gotten used to having those temporary tax subsidies. Now they've expired. There's no argument their price of health insurance is going to go through the roof, and many of them won't be able to afford it. But you don't want to extend this and make this permanent because that's not really what the American people had looked for. So now we're between a rock and the hard place. Democrats want to shut down the government. They shut down the government over this before. The Republicans want to try to figure out what to do. We had someone who I said was very, very courageous, Jen Kiggins, who said, hey, well, maybe we extend these for a little bit just so we don't shut the government down. Someone else who made a vote that a lot of his constituents have a question about is Rob Wittman. He voted with a few other Republicans and Democrats to extend temporarily for 3 years of tax credits. Let's go out to the WRVA Newsmaker hotline and join Rob Wittman, my congressman, VA1, to talk about the vote and where we are with this ACA Affordable Care Act tax credits and extension. He joins us here on News Radio WRVA. Good morning, sir.
Hi, good morning, Rich. Great to be with you.
Absolutely. So when I saw the news come down and they said, oh, Republicans voted with Democrats, saying, okay, bipartisan, that's good. And I saw your name on there, and I did a double take, I think as a lot of your constituents did, and then I wanted to find out, all right, what is Rob Wittman thinking? Why is he voting to extend these tax credits? So I wanted to bring you on the air. I kind of explained it that we have a lot of people that have signed up for Obamacare. They're depending on these tax credits, and if they go away, there's no question they're going to be in big trouble. And on the other hand, if you make this permanent, you've never seen a government program ever shrink. They only get bigger. We're between a rock and a hard place. So what's your thinking?
Sure, Rich. Well, you're exactly right. The impact on families across not just the 1st District, but across Virginia is going to be significant with these tax credits expiring. And I want to emphasize, I don't support government-run health care, but time and time again, what we've seen is Obamacare has reduced choice, it's increased cost, and it places Washington between patients and their providers. And I want to make sure that we're looking at a bridge to reform, to fix the system that continues to have increased cost, continues to put more and more pressure on families, and have the discussion about how do we actually reform the system, make meaningful reforms. And I don't want these costs to spike and then create bigger problems. And I understand, folks asking about, well, why would you do this? This is a temporary bridge. What we've done is to at least fix the immediate hardship on working families while trying to fix the broken structure that's in place. And that's why I supported this strictly temporary extension of these tax credits. And, my vote reflected both my public health experience. I was in public health for 27 years, but also my commitment to make sure that we are responsibly governing. And we have to protect families from these sudden cost increases. But we have to make sure that we are focusing on creating a system with patient-centered solutions immediately. I traveled around the district and met with healthcare providers, met with folks in hospitals, met with families that are going to be affected by this. And I want to emphasize that this is based on the reality that families and providers are telling me that they have to deal with. And this is not an endorsement of the current system. It just says that nor is it an endorsement of a permanent extension of these tax credits. This has to be a temporary bridge to get us to a more permanent reform of the system. Listen, I would have preferred not to have to vote on the credits how they are. I wanted the reforms to go along with the credits, just as Jen Kiggins had pointed out. But this is a short-term bridge. It's a House measure. The Senate's working on their measures to try to put some reforms in this. And I've spoken with senators there that are working on this, and there is a bipartisan effort on the Senate side to make sure we get to a place that actually has meaningful reforms that make the system work, but also help alleviate these massive increases that are going to affect families. I mean, for a lot of these families, this prices them out of the insurance market. So I want to make sure that we give families greater control over the choices that they have on health care and their finances. I want to make sure that they can meet their own individual needs in their health care and make sure, too, that they can do that with premiums and deductibles and overall costs that fall within their range of affordability. Those choices are key, and this just not there right now. So these tax credits are a bridge. They're not anything that's permanent. They're a way to hopefully get the debate and get the public policy on fixing the system to a place that it needs to be. I would have preferred a much, much different mechanism, but this was the only choice that I had going forward. It was a difficult choice, but I felt like the House has to be able to push this issue in order to get us to the place that ultimately I believe that's best for the nation and best for working families.
Rob Wittman joining us here on News Radio WRVA. It makes complete sense, sir. Makes complete sense. We're between a rock and hard place because we've got a broken system, and we broke it, we buy it. We've got to work through this. But we don't have a lot of time, but I've got 4 important questions I want to ask you. So if you don't mind, that way I make sure we keep it real tight. What's been the reaction within your district and outside your district? I got to imagine the rest of the caucus kind of looked at you like, you're going to do what?
Well, listen, I had great discussions with other members of the caucus. Everybody has a little bit different idea about how to go about this. I think, though, everybody's on the same page in saying the system we have is broken, that it has to be fixed, that it has to work to reduce cost for families, that it has to work to increase choices for families. And patients and providers need to be in control, not the government. So I think if you look across the spectrum, people have the same outcomes in mind, lots of different ideas about how we get there. I wanted to make sure that we forced this to a place where we actually got meaningful reforms in the long term. Again, this was a temporary bridge for us to be able to make sure that we weren't creating catastrophic conditions for families as we got to the place where we can make things better for our families. And listen, folks across the district, yes, I've had people ask me, why did you vote this way? And when I laid it out to them as to the reasons, they said, okay, that seems to be, a long-term focus on where we need to be. They want to make sure that we're fixing the system in total. And I understand, too, not wanting to continue a system that right now is broken. I understand they look at this and go, well, why would you continue to do something that really doesn't fix the problem? It just kind of throws money at it. That's not my intent. My intent is to say, how do we create a bridge to create a more permanent long-term fix that actually reduces cost for families, that actually fixes the system, gives them the choice, gives us the ability to make sure the system works for families. So it takes a little bit of explaining, but that's that's this job. It's sometimes taking the difficult votes, but explaining to people, why you think it's in their best interest for us to be able to pursue that track. And listen, I understand some people disagree with me, but I just want them to understand, my thought process going into this. And this is not an end point. This is not a permanent fix. This is a way to temporarily move the process along to get us to a better place for families to have what they need and to make sure the system works and reduces costs.
Okay, next big question, and this is a tough question for the GOP. We've talked about Obamacare since it came down the pike, and we've seen lawsuits and we've seen Republican talking points. But the big question is for the Republican caucus and the Republicans up on the Hill, why hasn't the GOP been able to come up with a plan to repeal and replace this broken system that we know is not sustainable?
Well, Rich, we've been through these machinations before. Lots of debate about repealing Obamacare. We had a vote that came up a number of years ago. They tried to get through the Senate and unfortunately failed there in the Senate. So yes, we have the effort ongoing. In fact, we passed a number of bills about 3 weeks ago that actually put in place meaningful and significant reforms on Obamacare. The challenge is how do we continue those efforts? And those efforts are going to be, I would argue, even more important as we go into the future. So I want to make sure that we get to that particular point. There are more pieces of legislation lined up for us to do even more reforms. The Senate is working on the same elements. They want to combine reforms with what you do with these tax credits. So I think everybody's focused on how do we get to the point. Just the other day, the president said, we have to fix health care. We have to make sure that we have a focus on health care policy. Even the president earlier on said, hey, we ought to look at a temporary extension of these tax credits, but we have to fix the larger problem with the health care system. And that is the promise on Obamacare was this, that it was going to reduce cost. It has not reduced cost. The promise was you're going to be able to have more choices. People don't have more choices. The promise was you get to keep your healthcare provider if you like your healthcare provider. Well, that didn't pan out. So all the promises of Obamacare haven't panned out. It is the system that we have. And I understand people look at it and go, well, it's better than nothing. Well, that's not satisfactory. What we need to do is to work to make sure that we indeed reduce healthcare costs. We cannot sustain this system if healthcare costs continue to increase. And we can't sustain it with a system that says, hey, here are tax credits that go to the insurance companies and that don't get at reducing costs. So this is a temporary measure to say, how do we get to a better place? Reducing cost, increasing choices, making sure that we do the things that we know are in the best interest of our hardworking families.
Okay, we just have a couple minutes here. When you were sitting down talking with your caucus and then you reached across the aisle to talk with Hakeem Jeffries and that caucus, what kind of assurance did they give you that this isn't going to help codify this and kick the can down the road and give them even more? Well, listen, we've had this for now 9 years. This is the law of the land. How do you know that we're not promoting what we permitted today?
Sure. Well, listen, this is a part of a discussion back and forth. So the bill that passed out of the House, something similar was taken up in the Senate and it didn't pass. So the Senate's going to come up with a different version. And what happens with that is you have the House version, the Senate version, and then there'll be the discussion about, how do we get to the place that we all want to be? How do we get those more meaningful reforms into the system? The challenge is if the House does nothing, then there's not a whole lot of place for the House to have in the negotiating between the House and the Senate. So this is going to get all of us to that place where we can have meaningful, serious negotiations about how we actually fix the system, make meaningful reforms to the system. And there are folks on both sides of the aisle that are laser focused on getting this done. And I know that folks out there are looking to Congress to say, you've got to fix this. You've got to be able to get this done. So this is really a forcing mechanism. It's forcing us to have that meaningful discussion, to find that bicameral, bipartisan solution to get things fixed. That's what people sent us here to do, Rich. They send us here to solve these problems. And these are tough problems. There is not a one-size-fits-all. There's not an easy answer to this. It's not just saying, oh, don't extend the tax credits, or, oh, don't reform Obamacare. Don't provide more choice to patients. You know, all of those things have to be part of this fix, have to be part of the things that we do. And the only way that we push that forward is to say, okay, let's take some steps that ultimately we know are not going to be the end result, but steps that push us to a much better end result. And that is, as I said, reducing cost, more choice for families, making sure we have quality of care, making sure that families have what they need to provide for their family health care.
So I've gotten to know you over the last year on the radio with me, and then we've been able to spend some time together. The easy part would have been for you just to say no, kept your mouth shut, just went along with the rest of the caucus. It takes some backbone. It takes a conscience to go up there and go across the aisle, vote with the Democrats. How hard is that to do? How hard is it to do, in some ways, the right thing and go against the trend and conventional wisdom so we break this gridlock in D.C.?
Sure. Well, it's a challenge, Rich, but it's part of this work. It's part of being a good legislator, is making those tough decisions and then explaining it to people. And sometimes the explanation takes a little while. In today's world, when an explanation takes a little while, it's a more difficult job. The easy thing sometimes is just say no and keep going on. Listen, I spent 27 years in public health. I have seen a system that through the years has gotten worse and worse and worse. And we are at a point where we have to fix this. I'm very passionate about it. And hearing the stories of families that have struggled through the current system, I know the things that have to be done. I know hearing from folks what has to be done. I know talking to healthcare providers what has to be done, talking to hospitals, talking to folks there who have the practical solutions in mind. So I'm very passionate about this, and I'm willing to jump out there and take a difficult vote and explain to people why this is important for us to move things forward, why ultimately it's going to result in us being in a better place. If we don't take those tough votes, if we don't make those tough decisions, and the things that need to happen will not happen. Status quo is not acceptable. So I want to make sure we're pushing the issue. I understand some people are going to disagree with me, but I want them to understand that there's a longer-term vision about where we have to be, reducing cost, more choice for families, better health care, better outcomes for families. All those things are things that have to happen, and people expect us to get those things done.
Folks, that's called leadership. Rob Wittman, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate you sharing your ideas and your thoughts with us. And again, I know this wasn't an easy vote, but watching our government shut down again was not the answer. So hopefully this moves the ball along and we stop kicking the can down the road and we actually take care of business in D.C. So I thank you for coming on the program with me.
Well, Rich, thanks so much. And I want to emphasize, too, folks, we're getting these appropriations bills done, too. So I am very confident that there will not be a shutdown by the end of the month. So between addressing this health care issue and getting appropriations bills done, we're on a good path.
Thank you so much, sir. I'll catch up with you soon.
Thanks, Rich.
All right, take care. Representative.
Are you fed up with rising auto repair costs and fewer repair options? You're not alone. Big automakers are blocking local repair shops and drivers from making routine fixes, and that's driving up costs for American families. As automakers aim to control basic repair data, tools, and parts, it's becoming more costly, time-consuming, and sometimes impossible for trusted local shops to compete. Too many drivers are forced to go to manufacturer-controlled service centers where they'll pay 36% more on average. When you buy a car, it's yours. You should decide where it gets fixed, not big corporations. Thankfully, the Repair Act, championed by leading conservatives Dr. Neil Dunn and Senator Josh Hawley, would level the playing field. It will ensure equal access to needed repair information and tools, protecting jobs, hundreds of thousands of small businesses, and putting choice back in your hands. Your car, your call. Tell Congress to pass the Repair Act at carrepairchoice.org. Paid for by the Car Coalition.
Rob Wittman joining us. I know there's a lot of people in the district that didn't understand, weren't happy, still might not be happy. I want to hear your thoughts this morning on the James River Air text line, 833-804-1140, 833-804-1140. I'm going to tell you, for my money, we can't have another government shutdown, and you're going to need people. They're going to have to look at the big picture, not just dig their heels in and point fingers, because We saw what happened last time, and that was a government shutdown that cost a lot of people a lot of things, including the entire country. So Rob Wittman joining us here on News Radio WRVA. That was a WRVA exclusive. All right, we are the voice of Virginia, broadcasting from the Commonwealth of the capital of the Commonwealth for over 100 years. I want to remind everybody about Luster by Adolph. They're located in the Ridge Shopping Center, Pearman, Quioccasin. You can find them online at haveluster.com. You actually have to go into the store to figure out really why I stand by these folks and why I believe in them so much. Rob and Daniel, the entire crew there, all the wonderful people that work there. But the thing that I love about it is the customers, because when I go in there and I'll visit with Robin and Daniel, went in there, I was looking at a watch for my son when he graduates, got something for my wife for Christmas, and it's the best gift she's ever gotten. So I'm in good graces for a while. And with Valentine's Day coming in, I was thinking about this. If you started thinking about what you're going to do for Valentine's Day, it's going to be here before you know it. It's already the 12th. And then there's so many different things and reasons why, whether it's a big gift, little gift, they're the perfect place to stop by. But I'm also realizing a bunch of people are getting their credit card bills right now for the holidays. Credit card bill is going to bite you a little bit. You're like, oh boy, what am I going to do? I'm going to ask you this again. Do you have old gold that's just sitting in your jewelry box, something that you inherited, you haven't worn, you bought 20 years ago and you haven't worn it in the last 10 years? Why are you just letting it sit there and collect dust? Do something with it. Take it into Luster by Adolph. Sit down with Robin and Daniel, the people you can trust. You're not going some seedy place in a back alley. This is a legitimate business with good people that I trust with my stuff. I trust them so much I left my World Series ring in there to make perfect, and they completely cleaned it up, made it look, it's beautiful. If I could trust them with something that means that much to me, you could trust them when it comes to selling your old gold. They'll give you top dollar for it right there on the spot. Gather that old gold, head into Luster by Adolph. They're located in Ridge Shopping Center, Pearman, Quioccasin, right there, and you know who they are. And by the way, tell them I said hi when you come in. That's Luster by Adolph.
Are you fed up with rising auto repair costs and fewer repair options? You're not alone. Big automakers are blocking local repair shops and drivers from making routine fixes, and that's driving up costs for American families. As automakers aim to control basic repair data, tools, and parts, it's becoming more costly, time-consuming, and sometimes impossible for trusted local shops to compete. Too many drivers are forced to go to manufacturer-controlled service centers where they'll pay 36% more on average. When you buy a car, it's yours. You should decide where it gets fixed, not big corporations. Thankfully, the Repair Act, championed by leading conservatives Dr. Neil Dunn and Senator Josh Hawley, would level the playing field. It will ensure equal access to needed repair information and tools, protecting jobs, hundreds of thousands of small businesses, and putting choice back in your hands. Your car, your call. Tell Congress to pass the Repair Act at carrepairchoice.org. Paid for by the Car Coalition.